elevating parent voices on learning loss. If you're one of the almost 5,000 individuals that have joined us for our weekly learning series since we launched, but particularly those of you that have participated since March of this year, you'll know that learning loss recovery is now a focus and high priority in our work at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. We've delved on issues related to digital equity, the role of philanthropy, the federal stimulus bills, the role of broadband media, and more. Central to learning loss recovery is the role that parents are playing. Across the country, parents are now finally seen as the most essential partner for schools as they support their children's learning at home. But as essential partners, parents must also be engaged and consulted to help districts and schools make the best decisions for their children. Today, we will learn from parent leaders about how they are working to ensure that their voices are heard in this difficult and uncharted moment in our history. In some cases, we'll learn about great successes where districts are embracing parents as partners. And in others, we'll see resistance and ongoing challenges resulting in legal action. Each story is inspiring and reminds us how concerned and committed parents are in ensuring that their children don't fall further behind. That the predictions about catastrophic learning loss for children, especially those from low-income families, do not impact their children. So without further delay, I'm pleased to welcome my friend and colleague, Adrian Pedrosa of Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, who will moderate and lead this conversation. Adrian is Director of Strategic Partnerships at Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, a national parent leadership training program focused on supporting and equipping Latino parents with children 0 to 5 years of age in their quest to ensure early school success. In his early career, Adrian worked with migrant farm worker families at the University of New Mexico, high school equivalence and college assisted migrant programs, and he served on the staff for former US Senator Jeff Bingham. Adrian also served on President Obama's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, and he is a W.K. Kellogg Foundation Community Leadership Network Fellow. So Adrian, thank you for joining us. Thank you for moderating, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Yoli, and thank you to everyone for joining us in this important conversation. We have a wonderful set of panelists that really feel deeply about this issue. I myself have 3 children at home, a preschooler, a 4th grader, and a 7th grader that are navigating this new learning environment we're in. And so it's near and dear to my heart, and I know the panelists feel the same way. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelists that we have here with us today. And I wanna go ahead and get started off with Jose. I'm gonna read their bios. I'm gonna give some opening remarks and then engage our panelists into this wonderful discussion that we wanna jump right into. Jose Arenas, if you could wave, Jose, brings 21 years experience in community organizing, grassroots leadership development, and nonprofit management to his role as Vice President of Community Organizing for Innovate Public Schools. Jose's work has focused on finding grassroots leaders and training them to build community organizations that can successfully address the public policy issues impacting their lives. Previously, Jose worked for People Acting in Community Together, PACT, where he organized public school parents and teachers in East San Jose to launch the first high-quality school options in the Alum Rock School District. Jose is also the former executive director of the San Diego Organizing Project, an affiliate organization with a wonderful group, PICO National Network. Thank you, Jose, for joining us. Next, we have Christian Buggs. If you could wave, Christian. Christian Buggs is the District 5 representative for Metro Nashville School Board. She holds a bachelor's degree in physics and 2 master's degrees in education. As a former middle school math teacher, consistent volunteer, and new mother, congratulations. She considers herself a lifelong educator. Her civil service experience spans the gamut of Nashville's public education system. Christian is also a founding board member for the Equity Alliance that seeks to educate, engage, and empower minorities around the civic process. Currently, she serves as a project manager for the Blueprint for Early Childhood Success, a citywide initiative focused on increasing the literacy rates of our youngest learners. Thank you very much, Christian, for joining us today. Next, we have Hannah Gravet, and if you could wave, Hannah. She is the Regional Vice President in Los Angeles for Innovate Public Schools. She brings with her over a decade of grassroots community organizing experience. In 2016, she joined the Innovate team as a senior manager of national organizing, where she led the Community Organizer Training Program and the Parent Leader Institute. In 2018, she became the founding organizing director for Innovate Public Schools work in Los Angeles. And prior to joining Innovate, she was the lead organizer for the San Diego Organizing Project, an affiliate of the PICO National Network. Prior to this community organizing work, Hannah worked as a social worker. Love social workers, my wife's a social worker. Hannah is a Rotary Club ambassadorial scholar and holds a master's degree in public policy from the University of Mumbai in India. She's currently living in Los Angeles, California with her husband and son. Thank you for joining us, Hannah, if you could wave. We also have Brittany Gregory. Brittany is a director of programs at Durham's Partnership for Children, where she provides leadership to programming staff and is responsible for the delivery and overall success of each program. She also works collaboratively with community partners to foster relationships and align efforts to ensure Durham's children enter school ready to succeed. Prior to this position, Brittany worked in elementary education for 4 years. She was an elementary school teacher, Go Teachers, for Wake County Public Schools, as well as an elementary success coach in Durham, North Carolina. Brittany has a bachelor's degree in elementary education with a minor in linguistics and communications from UNC Greensboro and has a master's degree in public administration from North Carolina State University. Thank you for joining us, Brittany. Kathy Mesa, our wonderful parent leader on this webinar, if you could wave, Kathy. She is a parent leader with the Southeast Los Angeles Parent Leadership Team. She has a 4th grader in the Los Angeles Unified School District, LAUSD. She's a committed parent that advocates and fights to ensure that 60,000 students in Southeast LA have access to a quality public school. Thank you, Kathy. Muchas gracias. And finally, definitely not least, another wonderful parent leader, Liliana Olayo. She's a co-president of Kofi Power Pack Illinois and an active parent leader in Aurora, Illinois with Padres Líderes Activos. She is also a Kofi peer trainer, president of the Oak Park School Neighbors Group, and president of the Bilingual Parents Advisory Council of District 131. She is now serving as a Kofi virtual peer ambassador on the front lines of the battle to ensure equity in remote learning, especially for bilingual students, and to save immigrant families economically. She's the mother of 3 and a new grandmother, Felicidades, who recently survived a battle with COVID-19. Thank you, Liliana. Thank you for joining us, and so glad that you survived the battle and that you are recovered and here with us today. Muchas gracias. So now, as you can see, we have a wonderful set of panelists that are going to share with us tons of wisdom from this parent perspective on really looking at how we support our students to ensure that they continue their learning and that we catch up if needed once the school year gets going. So just want to now ask our support staff here to go ahead and go to the next slide. Great. So at Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, we were hearing across the country from our partners that parents were struggling, as we all have been hearing, with this new reality in education. And so as the work of Abriendo Puertas is to honor and support parents as their children's first teacher and as their advocate, we decided to go out and to conduct a national poll in partnership with Latino Decisions. We did this, went out to the field in June, And I want to just take a few minutes before we get to the panel to share with you the results from this national survey that was done with Latino parents. We interviewed as well as did an online poll as well as a phone poll with about 1,200 Latino parents across the country. And these results, and what I'm going to share with you, is an idea of why these wonderful panelists are doing the work that they do, in addition to all the things they're hearing locally from their parents. So when asked about education priority among families, what we heard from Latino families across the country is that access to quality daycare and early learning while school was out was super important. 46%, almost half, said that was extremely important when thinking about
Oh, Adrian, you froze.
For the beginning of the school year that we're all now in. They also discussed needing help with online education, nearly half, and then also access to internet and technology, which we'll get into, because access, as we all know now, is extremely important to ensure that students are able to continue learning, not just for one student in the household, but what could be for 2 or 3 students, and 4 and beyond, like many of us have in our household. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. When specifically asking students, what are the subject areas that you are greatest concerned with, and asking these families this question, we heard that math, science were at the top, and as well as writing were at the top of the areas of greatest concern, of the specific subject areas that families were concerned that their children were falling behind in. We know that this is a concern to parents. And what we also heard was that a little bit over half of the respondents of parents are saying that math is a subject that they find difficult in supporting their children around at home. Science was next at 44%. This could be for various reasons, for a lack of maybe an understanding of the way math or science is taught, or the way, I know many times for my child, I have a hard time supporting my elementary school kid in math because of just the different ways that maybe Common Core standards are requiring, right, students to learn. So we know, based on this study, that Latino parents are saying that they're having a difficulty supporting their kids in some of these topics. Next slide. When thinking about going back to school, going back to learning, right, we ask parents, what are the precautions that schools should take? And of course, this supports what we all know, that parents overwhelmingly, if they're going back to in-person learning, that they want their children to go back to a safe learning environment where the classrooms are sanitized, are cleaned on a regular basis. They show strong support for staggering school days to reduce class sizes, to keep their students safe, a mix of in-person attendance and distance learning. So a lot of the things that we're seeing schools do now, parents are in support of, as we heard in this research, in this survey. We also heard that when it comes to students catching up and maybe losing ground, that parents also supported things like longer school days, whether it's done virtually or in some kind of hybrid model, but also supported a distance learning only in the fall, like many of our school districts are now facing, if necessary. 68% of parents did state strong support for this when we did the survey in June. Next slide. We know that internet access is key for the learning that is happening right now in the home. So as we think about 1/3 of families saying that they don't have access to the internet, and a little bit more than that saying that they only have access to the cell phone, we know that that's a challenge, right, that our communities and our schools will have to overcome to ensure that families are supported as they look for learning opportunities in a distance learning environment. Next slide. And the challenges with distance learning, we asked parents specifically, what are some of the things that make it challenging? Communication was key and was repeated over and over throughout the survey. We heard that 65% of our families that we surveyed wanted to ensure, right, that they had that they had communication, because it was hard to communicate with teachers, and learning was more difficult because of this. Also, back to the technology, almost half said that they don't have enough computers or tablets for everyone in the household. As we well know, one or two devices may not be enough, especially if the parents are having to work at home, which we know a lot of our families are essential workers that continue working. Next slide. And it's not enough to have the actual device. We know that software needs were extremely important. So when we asked, and this was a large number that really shocked us, that updated software, right, was crucial. That a lot of parents had the devices for their children, but they didn't have the right software, or maybe needed support to navigate the software. So 77% say that they needed updated software to help their children ensure that they were getting a high quality distance learning environment at home. Next slide. And all these slides will be available to you, so don't worry about if you're missing the numbers. I know I'm throwing a lot of data out there right now, but they'll all be available for you after the presentation. When asked about actually returning to in-person learning, right, we heard that over half were considering not returning to distance learning. We know a lot of our families are to in-person learning. We know a lot of our families, because they're essential workers, have been feeling the impact of COVID at higher rates than other populations. And so safety and health is a big concern. And so over half are considering not sending their children back in the fall. Slightly higher for Spanish speakers. And you'll see for kids from 0 to 4, even more so, right? Parents of younger children might be more concerned about the safety and the health, or maybe the young children's ability to not social distance and other requirements that are very difficult for our younger student population. Next slide. When asked about how schools can help kids catch up, right? What parents are saying is, again, communication was key. We're seeing a lot of school districts, when we shared this information out to school districts across the country, we immediately got a positive response. So we know a lot of school districts are increasing communication on the daily. When the schools are shut down back in March, back in March, a lot of schools were forced to kind of jump into this and maybe didn't have the infrastructure or weren't able to communicate. And that was a concern for parents. So now bumping into the fall, families want that daily communication. They want more in-person time with teachers, and even whether it's online or on the phone, 76% say they want that. And then one-on-one tutoring, which we know is essential for learning loss. 74% of parents said that they want one-on-one tutoring for their students. Next slide. Now, when asked, what are the mechanisms, right, that we can continue to do to engage parents? We know that families are going to be less likely to want to convene in groups in person. But the positive thing is 72% of parents say that they're going to look for virtual participation in parent meetings, groups, and convenings. Key to continue ensuring that we are engaging our parents, that we're looking to parents, not just for their voice, but for their leadership, and to ensure that we are hearing directly from parents what they need to ensure their student learning continues. 81% again, communication key, want communication. And when asked about what language, we're not showing the data here, but parents overwhelmingly want communication in multiple languages, not just English, when parents are speaking multiple languages in various different communities. Next slide. Now, we know we're talking about learning loss here, but we also know that when we're talking about education and learning loss, that we got to consider everything that's happening within a student's environment, within a home environment and a community environment. So what we heard from parents, that help with wages was the top response when asked just generally, what are things that government should address? 1 in 3 said families are saying they need help with wages and income. Next slide. And that is because 29% of Latino families have had somebody in their household lose their job. 1 in 3 of Latino parents and caregivers have seen their businesses shut down or drop in revenue. Over half have had their work hours cut or their pay cut, but have kept their job. So the economic impact on Latino families and on all families is severe. Next slide. And just to wrap up the last couple of slides, this was shocking also, that the safety net for Latino families is starting to dissipate. That we know that nearly half, 45% of Latino families, according to the survey, have less than $1,000 in their savings account. They're tapping into their savings account. Next slide. And even borrowing money from friends, from family members, going for loans. And also, if you could see the arrow here pointing, We have nearly 1 in 4 or over 1 in 4 of families are saying that they're actually going to predatory lending places like payday lending to get access to money in order to pay bills, in order to stay afloat. We know that these rates are high interest and that many of our communities are looking at ways to regulate these high interest loans. So families are under severe economic stress. Next slide. Just want to then close up by saying you can find the full report, full data here. And this is just to give context, really to frame, right, the conversation that we're about to have here, because these panelists, these community leaders that I introduced prior to these opening remarks are on the front lines doing the hard work, right, looking at policy solutions, organizing with families, bringing about lawsuits. So let's jump into the conversation with our first panelist. Here we have Hannah from Los Angeles. So if you want to take off the, you could take off that presentation slide, and we'll get into the discussion here. And Kati, a parent leader with the organization here. But as we heard in the intro, right, Hannah is in Los Angeles. She's at the forefront of parent advocacy around learning loss. Tell us, Hannah, about the demands that parents have put forward and the implication of parents if the demands are not satisfied with the response by the district. So we want to hear from you. What are some of the demands, and what are some of the implications that parents are not satisfied if the district does not meet these demands?
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. So in Los Angeles, Innovate's mission here is really to build parent power, to be able to create the kind of public schools, excellent public schools in their community. And so just to frame, when we think about all of our work, it's really about this. I was never good at physics, but someone smart told me that Sir Isaac Newton taught us all we need to know about community organizing and power, which is this idea that like an object will remain at rest or in motion, but in a straight line until there's some outside force that compels that object to shift. The way I always thought about it as an organizer was like baseball. Like in Los Angeles, like again, my dad was really into baseball, and he would always tell me that the baseball is really just a game of catch between the pitcher and the catcher until like a batter can actually hit the ball somewhere. And so in Los Angeles, what we quickly learned when our parents were starting to understand what was happening with distance learning is that like our school board and our superintendent in Los Angeles was just playing a game of catch with our teachers union. And they were throwing this ball back and forth, back and forth. And we spent all summer trying to move the ball somewhere else in the field. Our parents were swinging and swinging and swinging. You'll hear from Kati all the different ways we tried to like hit that ball somewhere else on the baseball field. And we just weren't able to break through and get the attention from our elected officials, our school board members, and our superintendent to actually like make decisions that we're gonna move all those things, Adrian, you just talked about, right? Our Latino families, our Black families in LA, the low-income families we were organizing, the distance learning plan was not working for them. They saw their students who were already behind falling farther behind. And we decided we need to put together a very clear set of demands that we could actually measure. Are they listening to us? What demand are they actually meeting? So if you could move to the next slide, and they're in the chat box too, but like we started out, it's really simple. I won't go into the details underneath, but it was like we were telling LAUSD, we need you to make a clear commitment to our children first. You are a learning institution. We need to make sure, despite all the challenges that we're all facing with distance learning, we need to make sure that there are clear commitments for our children to learn, and that's going to be reflected in the budget, your priorities around what school is going to look like, and how you're going to keep us safe. So we want to make sure we learn, and we want to make sure our kids are safe. And we have some specific ideas about what that should look like. And then we also talked about how we wanted to make sure parents were engaged in the decision making and always knew what was coming. So this idea, I really connected to your, I think it was over 70% of parents wanted regular daily communication. what we were experiencing in the spring is that many of the families and many of the schools where our kids were attending, they didn't hear anything from their teacher or their principal throughout the school year. And they wanted to make sure there was regular communication between the school and between the district about what was going to be happening and what was expected for their kids. And then the other thing is they wanted way more transparency about the decisions. So what we experienced in the spring is that the whole distance learning plan was created behind closed doors in private, not even with the school board involved, between the superintendent and the teachers union. That whatever the agreement for the distance learning plan was super narrow and focused just on the contract of the bargaining agreement. And we wanted the bargaining agreement to be what the contract is for teachers, and we wanted the superintendent to create a much broader agreement that was between the district and families. And we were never able to have an open dialogue with board members involved where families could come and talk about what they wanted and engage in a public, transparent way about what the plan was going to look like. And then our final ask was that we wanted equity. We wanted, like, our families wanted our kids, their kids, right? Low-income kids, kids of Latino kids, English, kids that are learning English, African-American kids, they needed to be the focus. We needed to create a plan that would work for those students, because if it worked for those students, then it would work for everybody. And that's how we wanted the focus to stay. So we spent the whole spring trying to like shift and adjust and influence what was happening just day to day in the schools. And then we spent the whole summer trying to build the kind of power we would need to like break up that game of catch, right? Like hit the ball in the field. And you'll hear all of that from Katy in a minute. But what we experienced is that we just couldn't get enough power, enough influence to get the things the important, urgent things that our families needed and we were demanding. And so we actually did eventually, where we are now, we've gone through a whole process where we have a group of parents that we're supporting that are actually preparing to file a lawsuit against the district, against LAUSD, because we still deeply believe that parents are the most important advocate. Parents know best what their kids need. Parents need to be at the center of these decisions. Parents need to be driving and deciding what's going to be happening in schools. Principals, board members, they need to be talking to parents. And we were not able to demand or force that to happen in our district. And so our hope now with this lawsuit, well, one is that parents now finally will be able to put forward a set of remedies for the harm that's being caused in the distance learning plan now that actually can have some teeth, some power to force. So it's just another strategy to hit the ball. But we also are hoping that what will happen is a judge will be able to take the needs of parents, and if parents can't be their own voice and speak for themselves, can we get a judge that will speak and bring parents' need and parents' interest into these negotiations when we think about all the powerful parties that are making these decisions? So that's sort of, I kind of truncated the story. That's where we landed at. That's where we are now. We will probably prepare, we have a group, we have 12 or 13 parents that are going to be plaintiffs in this lawsuit that are working with a law firm in Los Angeles now to put all that case together. And we will likely be filing in the next week or so. So hopefully you guys will see and hear things in the media that we finally maybe can move the ball somewhere in the field. But I know you'll transition, but we have Katy here that I think can actually fill in more of the story about what parents actually have been doing.
Thank you, Hannah, for that. And just want to go to Katy, and Jose is going to help to do some translation here. I appreciate that, Jose. Katy, usted es uno de los padres líderes allí en Los Ángeles en su comunidad. Cuéntenos cómo los padres se reunieron, se juntaron, ¿verdad?, para ese esfuerzo para hacer estas demandas. Say this in English, Katy, you're one of the parents on the front line, one of the parent leaders there. How did parents come together, and what has been the district's response to your demands? ¿Cómo ha respondido el distrito a sus demandas?
Sí, gracias. Lo primero que quiero remarcar es que los padres tenemos más poder del que pensamos. Nuestro grupo de padres líderes ha trabajado muy duro para lograr que nuestros hijos reciban la educación que ellos se merecen.
Yes, thank you. First thing I'd like to say is that parents have been working very hard to obtain the commitments and traction on this issue that we've been putting energy into.
Wonderful. Jose, I'm going to ask you if you could speak up a little bit when you translate. We're having a little hard time hearing you. Thank you. Kathy, por favor, puedes seguir.
Desde el cierre de las escuelas, empezamos a organizar diferentes formas de manifestar nuestro desacuerdo y frustración sobre el aprendizaje a distancia.
Since the closure of the schools, we employed various tactics to go after the loss of learning in schools.
Organizamos 2 protestas en carro alrededor de las oficinas de LUSD. Logramos captar la atención de los medios de comunicación y de ser escuchados.
We did 2 car rallies and protests outside and around the Los Angeles School District offices, which got the attention of the media and press.
Varios padres grabaron videos de su testimonio sobre el aprendizaje a distancia y las malas experiencias y los difundimos en todas las redes sociales, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, y etiquetamos a los de la mesa directiva de LUSD.
We as well were able to capture the experience of many parents in LAUSD in how they were experiencing the closure of schools and shelter in place and distance learning. And we broadcasted it through various social media means.
Iniciamos una campaña que nombramos No Progreso, No Regreso y creamos una lista de demandas para que al regresar a la escuela las clases fueran de calidad y que todos los niños recibieran las mismas oportunidades.
We created and branded a campaign called No Progress, No Return, which was about all the things that we needed to make sure that we had a successful return to schools. That included the voice and demands of parents.
Actualmente, como lo mencionó Hannah, vamos a presentar una demanda contra LUSD, ya que aún se siguen violando los derechos de nuestros hijos de recibir una educación pública.
And as Hannah said, one of the last things we've been doing, or most recent things we've been doing, is putting together a lawsuit on LAUSD to make sure that we're able to insert our demands into the decision-making process, which we haven't been able to so far.
Quiero animar a todos los padres a que sigan luchando por la educación de sus hijos. Recuerden, los maestros tienen un sindicato de maestros. Nuestros hijos solo nos tienen a nosotros.
I just want to encourage everybody and inspire parents on this call to get involved, to make a change, and to organize. Educators have unions, and parents and families only have each other to protect them.
Thank you.
No importa el idioma, la raza o la cultura. Si puedes soñarlo, puedes lograrlo.
It doesn't matter your race, your age, or culture. You could accomplish anything.
Gracias, Kathy. Gracias por ese mensaje, por su historia. Thank you for that message, for your story of that powerful story and your powerful words about parents really taking the lead and not just expressing our voice, but taking action. And thanks for your wonderful work there. It's a perfect pivot over to Jose, since we already got introduced to you there. So I want to ask you, Jose, Innovate Public Schools assisted parents in a statewide petition there in California at the highest level of government. Tell us about this effort and the results so far.
Sure thing. Yeah, I mean, really, it was really an inspiration from the work that Kathy and Hannah and her team are doing in Los Angeles, where they compiled this list of demands for LAUSD. And, we have active organizing in San Francisco, in the Peninsula, in San Jose, and as well in Los Angeles. And our staff just was hearing the same thing all throughout the state, is that there was very little either live teacher time, instructional time, had a lot of issues with technology, access to technology, et cetera, et cetera. And, families with students with special needs, really, missing their IEPs, IEP translations, et cetera. And so we began to do a couple of meetings for leaders across the state, and we had probably 3 or 4 meetings with a couple hundred parents, really working together to put together a statewide agenda of demands that then we pushed out to the California legislature and the governor around what we wanted to see in terms of what the state was requiring or asking districts to do in reopening. So, but really owe a debt of gratitude to Hannah and the LA team for their work and imagination on what's possible. And really the result of that is that every one of our regions ended up, since we came up with this list of demands, every region then developed a local platform of demands and issues around reopening and distance learning. And we did what we call community action forums with school board members and decision makers around what either the implementation of statewide guidelines and policy around reopening and or some of the lists of our demands. And so, some successes and others sort of still pending and still working. Like Hannah used a lot of the language of demand and force and teeth and power. We can't be at the mercy of the benevolence of power. Like we get what we're powerful enough to get, nothing more. And so it's all about building power. And so I think that, just to wrap it up, I think that we started our statewide work with this slide here, which is a glass of lemonade, some young women doing jujitsu, and a camel. And we took this from one of our sages in the world of organizing. Just one of the central principles is, you got to turn a negative into a positive. And in jujitsu, one of the rules is you got to sense movement and use the opponent's energy. And then with the camel is like, you got to get the camel's nose into the tent. And once you get that nose in, everything else follows. And so like what makes organizers and organizing different is we have a vision and imagination. And we just need to be able to see down the street and around the corner. And so that's sort of, I think, what's that's been our lesson in this is like it's just, this is really forcing us to have vision and imagination with parents, but to be able to like sense where things are going. Anyways, so that's sort of it, but hoping to come back and report on some more progress as the fall reopening progresses. That's it.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Hannah. Muchas gracias, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing that story, for giving us all a quick schooling on organizing, grassroots organizing, how it's done at the local level, for reminding us that it's about building power. In Spanish, we say poder, right? Poder is to be able to. So hear your words about, if you can't do it, right, it's not building power. So you got to take those actionable steps. And you sharing that story gave us a great example on how that's done. Muchas gracias. I want to ask now Brittany Gregory, if we can pull up her slides. Brittany, again, from Durham, North Carolina, we know that parents have been speaking out about remote learning, right? Remote learning, distance learning. Please share with us about the Digital Equity Listening Project. What did you hear from parents, and how is the local school district responding?
Yes, definitely. And as a board member with the Durham Public Schools Foundation, I'm honored to be able to highlight the work with this wonderful network. So back in March, Durham Public Schools, like many school systems across the country, had to quickly pivot to remote learning. And before COVID, our school system already was in the know that like lower income families and our Black and Latinx families were less likely to have reliable computer and internet access. And COVID has increased that urgency to make sure that we put in systems and listen to the community to figure out how can we make swift action to close this digital divide. So again, this past spring, our educators, students, and families, they showed remarkable resolve in pivoting to remote learning, but there were definitely some glaring disparities that we saw. which prompted the digital listening, the Digital Equity Listening Project. And one thing that I wanted to note is that prior to COVID, Durham Public Schools already had recognized the longstanding digital inequities in the community and included digital equity in its goals for its 2018-2023 strategic plan. So again, this has kind of been brewing, and COVID has accelerated the needs in our community. So what we're hearing, the Digital Equity Listening Project, there were a group of students. The Durham Public Schools Foundation partnered with Student U, and that is an organization that works with students in the community who will eventually be first-generation college students. And they participated, a group of students participated in a week-long training to become interviewers for this project, which I thought was a really neat perspective in ways to really holistically involve both families and students of Durham Public Schools. So 15 students led interviews. They interviewed 24 parents, 28 students, and 21 educators. And the emerging themes from this listening project are packaged in a way to help inform not just Durham Public Schools, but Durham City and County and community organizations who are working to make sure that students have equitable access to high quality remote digital instruction, and that we strongly believe that Durham's full resources behind our students, we can make sure that our students not only survive but thrive through this crisis and long after. Next slide, please. So there were 5 major themes that emerged from this project. So 1, access to the 21st century and technology skills became crucial. 2, family school communication became even more important than before. 3, parents, students, and teachers struggled to juggle daily demands, schoolwork, and childcare. 4, parents, students, and teachers need social emotional support. And last but not least, teachers need more professional development to create engaging and digital resources. And I just wanted to highlight some of the statements that parents made during this. So almost every parent reported that technology access as a barrier. One parent said, "It was pretty hard for us. We didn't have internet or anything like that. We haven't accessed any lesson at all. I'm very afraid that my kids are going to fall behind." Around family school communication, a parent shared that their teachers called more and were in communication more about turning in homework. I'm thankful for them caring about my students personally. Around the third bullet point, we had a parent that just said, "I need another grown-up in the home just to help with juggling work-life balance." And then last but not least, around social emotional support, a parent expressed that they are afraid that their child is going to miss out being around people, and that they don't have a lot of children in their immediate family. So they're really, really concerned about missing out on activities. And then parents also expressed that the materials that were given in the spring were boring, uninteresting, and they'd like to see more involvement and engagement, and that that they want to make sure that there's structure and that the content is as engaging as possible. And so, and again, like the teachers, their responses definitely complemented and echoed a lot of things that the parents had stated. Next slide. So then again, this, if you look at the report, and I do have the link to it in the last slide, this is what the different parent responses look like. Next slide. So again, this is just the first step in this listening, digital equity listening project. There are plans in the fall to continue to listen to parents and different stakeholders in the community And this project is not a standalone project. The Durham Public Schools Foundation, they are also raising money to help accelerate digital equity. Our school system, before the start of the school year over the summer, pledged to become a one-to-one device where students not only have laptops, but hotspots as well, and tech support. And it's a really comprehensive plan, an ambitious plan to really, again, bridge that digital divide. So again, the Durham Public Schools Foundation, they hope that this project will again inform our community stakeholders, and this will be the start of just really something transformative in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. I'm getting some feedback there. Okay, thank you for that wonderful example. Very specific things that you all have been doing, and for reminding us that the digital divide is not new. Just COVID has exposed the digital divide, and you gave some very specific examples on the great work you're doing on the ground, really in partnership with so many different groups to ensure that families are getting what they need as they navigate remote distance learning. Thank you for that story. I want to go now to Liliana Olayo. Just as a reminder, she's with Kofi, Power Pack, Illinois. Love Kofi. Of course, we all love Kofi and the great work that's done there in Illinois. Liliana, you have helped ensure that the district is listening to the voices of Spanish-speaking parents. We know that language access is extremely important as parents are looking for more communication. Please share your story and how, as a result of your efforts, the district is now including parents in decisions to ensure that their children do not fall further behind.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Adrian. Yes, like you are saying, especially for the Latino community, for the Spanish speakers, I could say in my school district, the 80% of students are from Latino families. So, you know, they're English learners, and besides that, their families at home, their parents, you know, their English is very limited. So, you know, I am the president of the Bilingual Parent Advisory. So, you know, when when this all started, you know, the like staying home order and all of that, you know, I feel like the families were very disconnected. And as I was attending the board meetings from my school district, you know, like virtually, I was hearing, you know, like their plan, everything was doing so fine, and how they didn't see or didn't hear any, you know, anything wrong. So whatever, you know, kudos to them, because everything was going great. And I was listening, and from the other side, you know, as a parent, I was like, wait, that's not how parents feel. This is not being a smooth transition. This is not being even right. So, but that was me, you know, how I was feeling. Like I didn't want to speak just for my own experience. So I started calling parents, and I wanted to start being intentional, you know, asking questions like, how do you feel? Do you feel being connected? Do you feel like this was easy? This was like the school district did a really good job putting all, you know, we got like devices for middle schools and high schools, the district provided. For the elementary and kinder, they only gave like some packets, learning packets. But you know, it was so hard since this was the first time we're going remote. We didn't have the tools. Most of our families, our parents, we didn't know how to navigate the system. We didn't even know, you know, some families didn't even have internet at home. So, you know, there was so many barriers right there. So when I started calling parents, families to hear their stories, you know, and I started hearing, you know, like, yeah, this was frustrating. This was really bad, you know. This is already a bad situation with a pandemic. And not just that, I had to worry about how my schools are gonna fall behind in school. So, you know, that was a really worry. It was a different story from what I was hearing from the board meetings. So then I got all the highlights from the conversations from the parents with the families. And I sent it to the superintendent from my school district. And it's like, you know, kind of like, well, you know, I wish you could hear what parents think, and you could see how we've been going through very hard times because families not struggling only with income losses, but also, you know, some family members getting sick. And on top of that, you know, struggling with the learning, that they don't know how to find the resources. The schools are closed and it's just, you feel lost. So, you know, it was a very good outcome from the superintendent. Her approach was like really, you know, she was very well taken. She responded to me right away. I didn't know all of this. So I would like to meet with you, with the parents, with a group of parents, and hear from them and explain them how we're trying to do our best for this situation. But definitely, I want to hear their advices or their stories. So, you know, I put out together a meeting with the parents and the superintendent. We invited them out to our table. So parents, we had to create our table because we were never invited first. So it's like, okay, I gotta do something. And especially, you know, because I feel like with my community, it's like, well, I'm not only the president of the bilingual parents because I'm very smart. No, but because they see me like I can be their voice. So they agree, they come to our table, they start listening, and the superintendent was like very, it seems like surprised, like she didn't expect what, you know, hearing from the parents, like how this was like really bad situation. So we also suggest, you know, what we needed. We needed more support from them. We needed a better communication from them. And we tell them, you know, we really want to be part of this initiative, like when you're trying to reopen the schools for the next fall, for the next school year, you know, like, okay, we cannot do anything about this spring because it's done. We cannot change things. So we're not gonna just be arguing about what you did, what you didn't do, but try to find solutions, how we can do better for the next school year. This is done, you know, but we learn from our mistakes. So yeah, she asked us like, what would we need to, she could be, you know, to just help us, like give us the resources. So we asked for training for parents, like technology training, like, you know, if you can guide us how we can help our children better, you know, if you teach us how to navigate the platforms, the different platforms that you will be using. So we are prepared and we already know, so we can support our children, especially the younger children. So she agreed. So far, we already have like 3 different series of training for parents in Google Classrooms, because that's the new platform that our kids will be starting. So we already got those 3 trainings for parents about Google Classroom. And another thing what we were asking, especially for our communities, we don't know where to go when we have a need. It's like we would like to know how the school district is supporting our families that are facing, they need food, or they need healthcare, or they just need like internet, you know, help. So they listen and they create a whole web page in the school district where we can just access one page, like the school district, and all of the other resources is food, clothing, healthcare, everything is in one page. You just click there. You don't even need to leave the page. You click in the page and the link right away take you to the agency that you are looking for, that you are searching for. So, you know, for us, that was like great. And when right now that we have it, I would just say like, thank you for listening. And you know, this, I think parents, we don't need to wait to be invited. We need to organize our parents and invite them to our table. Because sometimes, you know, just waiting and waiting for things to happen, it's not gonna happen. So we had to, as parents, we had to take the first step. I took the first step saying, okay, you're saying that everything is fine, but you need to listen the other part. If you have this great plan, but if this great plan, it's not being effectively delivered to our families, that's a big issue, because you can keep saying that you're doing everything right, but if you don't hear from parents, that's the most important. So, you know, so far at this point, we already have like around 3 different meetings with the superintendents. And so far, I could say they do listen. They do listen. And as soon as I told the superintendent that the parents that we feel it, that we needed to be included at the table at the decisions when the important decisions were taken, she, you know, it wasn't nothing new for them because they already had the committee, the planning committee, but parents were not invited, were not in that meeting, in that committee. So the next week, she invited me to that meeting. It's like, I want you to see that we are doing our best to ensure the next coming year, everybody's prepared. So she invited me, and they have like a full committee of administrators, different departments, and I was the only parent there. So I was like, and she presented me as a parent that she wanted to know what the school district were doing for our families. And I was, you know, I was well received, I could see, you know, I didn't feel like, you know, like the administrators were thinking like, what a parent is doing here. No, they welcome me, and they say, yeah, they were already working. So they told me, when we have three different things that we can present to parents, then you can choose from those three. But so far we are trying our best to get the best or the easiest platform for your kids to have. So, which was great at the beginning. You know, right now we're studying remotely for the first quarter. But before that, before getting to that decision, they were sending surveys to our families, you know, like, what would you like to have? And families have the choice to choose, either you want to send your child twice a week or you want to keep it home. So they were still, you know, it's like parents' choice. But suddenly, you know, something happened here in my area, in my county. So they say, you know, following the CDC guidelines is like, according to, we have like a very high cases, it's like it wasn't safe to open the schools. So they had to change. But that wasn't because parents, we didn't want it. It was, you know, for the safety of everybody. Yeah. But I could say so far with my school district, I'm pleased. I'm very pleased that they are listening. And we are having like a communication, like the superintendent, she contacts me, like, you know, like hey, you hear from any parents, hey, you hear how we're doing, if they have any other comments. So, you know, I kind of like in between and trying to connect my parents, my community with the school district. So I think, you know, like when they look out to me, is because they don't see only me, but they see the whole community, especially the Spanish speakers. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you, Liliana, for that amazing story. I love that you took proactive action. You didn't wait. You proposed solutions, and you got things done. And what you saw and what we learned is that school districts, when we, you know, show our voice, speak to the solutions, and many times they will respond to that voice. So thank you for sharing that compelling story. Thank you to all the panelists. I know we have some cute questions that have come up. I'm going to pass it over to Yoli, who's going to moderate this Q&A session for us. And
well, before we do that, let's go to our commentator.
Oh, yes. I am sorry. Yes.
No worries.
I jumped ahead and I missed the very important message from Christian Buggs with, again, Metro Nashville School Board. Christian, if you could just share some reflection, your reactions, you know, what struck you about the presentations that were made by our panelists with the very, you know, great examples of what was going on in Los Angeles on the ground and Durham, North Carolina, and as well as Illinois.
Sure, so much. I mean, I sit in a very unique position in that not only do I manage the Literacy Partnership here in Nashville, but I am a sitting school board member. And I ran for office because I was a teacher who felt like I wasn't being heard. My uncle actually sits on the State House Education Subcommittee here in Tennessee, and still I was very disconnected and felt extremely disenfranchised. So I love that you all had parents here, because that's who we need to hear from. You know, I love that I heard about surveys, both from you, Mr. Pedroza, and you, Ms. Gregory, just the surveys to make sure that stakeholders had some input, to make sure that no one felt left out of the conversation, because as has been said and accepted by many, we've known for years. The disenfranchised have known for years how disenfranchised we are. We've known that, you know, we've not been comfortable in education or in many public spaces where dollars should have been spent to better support our communities. But COVID certainly leveled the hierarchy. It's made some of our more affluent neighbors feel uncomfortable for the first time. So finally, you know, these questions and concerns are being elevated. And sure, it's the same that it took so long for this to happen, but this is the silver lining of this pandemic, that more light is being shown, more benevolence is being offered by the community. But I love the idea that, even as a school board member, I love the idea that parents have been empowered to take action, no matter how drastic they think it is. I mean, I have a 2-year-old toddler and I can't wait until he gets to school, but I will burn my city down if it doesn't support him better. You know what I mean? And I love that parents have that same fire and that their community organizes with boots on the ground to connect them. Again, there's just so many thoughts. I really appreciated being able to hear all of this, and I'm sharing it with my parent work group, because I need our parents to feel more empowered and more engaged. And sometimes our systems are so convoluted in how they work that you don't know where to insert yourself. You're not sure if you need to speak with your city council or alderman. You're not sure if it's a school board decision, or maybe it's the director of schools that you need to storm the gates to. But I would ask that parents remember that you have more than a small stake in education and a small stake in your city. So feel empowered to understand what's happening in your city budget, to understand how your schools are being resourced, and make sure that you influence that. Never be afraid to go to your city capitol, to your school board members, to your mayor, even to your governor. We are tasked and elected to serve you. So thank you, Ms. Meza, you know, about just making sure that you get parents involved and making sure that you have developed and stood up protocols by which they can do that. My mind is swirling, and I love the idea that Mr. Pedroza, you were talking about in your survey, that math and science seem to be one of the largest disconnects for parents, or the place where they felt most uncomfortable in supporting their students. And I mean, I was a middle school math teacher, so it's hard to remember slope and functions and systems of equations and things that many of us do not use in our day-to-day lives. So that there are resources for sure out there, but push your elected officials, push your initiative to make sure that they're not just grassroots, but what we consider grass tops, those nonprofit organizations, your area chamber of commerce, other stakeholder organizations that have people of influence that can push the narrative for you. I'm just going to stop talking, because I could brain dump for days. I cannot wait to rewatch this with my parent group. So just thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing parent stories. Thank you for the organizers who are connecting the disenfranchised community to just higher levels of advocacy. Just keep going.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for your service and for serving on your school board, and for reminding us as an elected that it is about democracy. It's about our civic participation. It's about the community. Very great to hear coming from an elected official, right? That you want our involvement, you want our activism, and you will see us as partners when we speak our voice. Thank you for that. Now, Yoli, if you want to facilitate some Q&A for us, thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to all the panelists, through Christian, for your insights as you reflected on all the richness that the parents and the parent leaders shared. I'm gonna actually start with a question that came for you, Christian. So come back on when you have a minute. This question, it comes from Janet Morford, and is wondering, in your experience, what helps to make parents feel empowered? What barriers get in the way, and how can we reduce those barriers? Maybe from your position as a school board member, what you're seeing and what you're experiencing.
So sure, I think sometimes parents aren't engaging because they don't know when a big decision is going to happen, or they don't know who to go to. So I'll say in Nashville, we put out the agenda for our public meeting 1 week before we meet, right? The Thursday before our Tuesday meetings. And so I just try to forward that out to my community, but I would just ask parents to first find out when it is that your school board, your council, or even your state legislator meet to talk about education. It might be once a month, but more often it's at least twice a month. So find that out first, make sure that you are watching those meetings. I think as Hannah spoke about, some backdoor conversations, that's not supposed to be happening. Whenever the school board talks, and makes decisions around what our director suggests, we have to have an open meeting. They have to be on record. So find those things out first. Make sure you're reviewing the agenda when you can. Many school boards are now publicizing their meetings either via their local Channel Network or on YouTube. So feel free to go back and watch those. But I would say, yes, find out what the agendas are for each meeting, review those and see if there's anything that impacts you that you would like to be aware of, and get in the habit of trying to watch those as often as you can. It may be that you get with a group of friends and you all kind of trade off if time is scarce for you, or maybe you just once a month, you are the person that watches and reports back to your friend group or your group of parent supports. I think the biggest thing is that, you know, it's been identified here is communication. How do you make sure you're engaging community members who have never been engaged? How do you make sure that you have up-to-date contact information? That's another thing. Make sure that you reach out to your school district and your individual school to make sure that your email address and that your phone number are up to date, so that if there are call outs or if there are daily emails, that you're in the loop. I'll keep thinking, and I'm sure I'll put something in the chat if anything else comes up. But last thing I would say, know who your elected officials are, and then reach out to them. Reach out to your school board member, ask to have lunch, or at least a Zoom meeting, a Zoom lunch. Let them know what your concerns are, and ask them if you can be updated to receive newsletters from them. Reach out to your state representatives. If you are already members of a coalition, you know, developing a day on the Hill or a day at the board where you can get to know these people and understand their processes better, I think that will help also.
Great. And I'd love to ask our parent leaders the same question. So I'll start with Lily and then Kathy. What, in your experience in the work you've been doing with and alongside parents, really helps parents to feel that sense of power and that they have a right to ask questions, to ask and demand sometimes for what their children need? What is it that helps parents feel that sense of empowerment? I'll start with Lily and then Kathy.
Yes, thank you, Yoli. Well, as for me in my area, definitely what we think is very important to have a backup organization that is backing up the parents. In this case, Coffee and Power Pack, you know, is doing such a great job, you know, like guiding us and giving us the tools, the resources, you know, like the trainings for how to advocate, you know. So far, I started 5 years ago with Coffee, and in a training that was provided by my school district 5 years ago, and I was just like a parent. I know all parents are leaders because we have to be with our families, with our children, but you know, sometimes we don't know. We don't see us leaders. So after the training with Coffee, you know, if they gave me like goals, what would be my goals, and was like to see a healthy community, and because my area wasn't like a very good, safe area to live in. And it's like, well, I love my community. I don't want to live, you know, if I had the opportunity just to leave and go to another area, I want to do something. I want to do something about it. And one of the goals was like to be, to create a group of neighbors from my area where we can be connected with the police department and with the city of Aurora where I live, you know, to bring more resources to my area. That was one of the goals. And school buses for a school district, we didn't have before. And the other thing was like, you know, to be the parents, you know, be the voice for their kids and be heard. So, you know, those were like goals, but we were just like dreams. But as I start, you know, being trained more and way more involved in what Coffee does, you know, it's like I have to learn. It's like, no, this is so much, you know, that we need to do, that we need actually to motivate more parents so this group can keep growing. And, you know, like if I already consider myself a leader, you know, just want to have more leaders and keep growing. So I think definitely the work that Coffee and Power Pack is doing impacted my life in a way that I was like, I wanted to be like them. I wanted to change my community. And sometimes, you know, that's what you need. Someone behind you to telling you that you could do.
I'm going to ask Kathy the same question, but Hannah, I'm going to tee you up after this because I saw a conversation in the chat and in the Q&A about how an organization that supports parents knows that where that line is about what you want versus what the parents want, because I think that's a very important part of the conversation. But Kathy, I want to make sure you're still with us.
Sí.
Muy bien, Katy. ¿En inglés o en español?
En español.
La pregunta es, ¿qué piensa usted? ¿Qué es lo que le ayuda a un padre sentirse que tiene un sentido de poder para lo que necesitan sus hijos? So I just asked the question, in your experience, what helps parents feel more empowered?
Pues lo primero que los padres debemos hacer es estar seguros que tenemos ese poder porque lo tenemos. Y no dejar, como dije anteriormente, que el idioma sea una barrera. Siempre abogar por nuestros hijos porque nuestros hijos es lo único que tienen a nosotros. Entonces nosotros debemos siempre estar peleando por lo mejor para nuestros hijos. Y también buscar grupos como el que yo estoy de Innovate Public School, porque siempre el que te enseñen cómo organizarte siempre te va a dar ese poder de saber cómo abogar por los derechos de tus hijos.
Muy bien. So Kathy's response is similar to Lily, saying that, yeah, finding your own voice and your own sense of power is where it starts, but having support from an outside organization, a partner organization, to provide the training, the tactics, the strategies of how you can advocate effectively is important and powerful. So gracias a las dos. Hannah, let's come back to that question that you were following it because I saw your responses, but if you could just sort of frame what that conversation was around the role that parent leadership organizations play and the decisions they make on behalf of who versus the real voice of parents and how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important. And it was really, I was responding around like this idea of how do you keep parents engaged when they have so much on their plate? And it's true, it's hard to do that. But if, in my experience, if parents actually are like authentically, powerfully engaged first with your organization, like they stay committed, because that's what parents need and want, right? They're looking all over the place for like their voice to be heard, to be able to like have influence, to be able to influence what's happening to their child. So as long as they have an experience inside your organization first, that like they do have power, their voice matters with you, then they're going to hang with you to get that, to figure out how to amplify and get that voice to matter in the community. And I really do think it's about each organization needs to be clear about it, like self-interest is always at play and interest. So, and it doesn't mean that your whole organization shifts and you only do whatever the parents want to do, but you have to be very clear as an organization, what are our organizational interests, and very clear and give space and authentically listen and engage parents around what are your interests. And when those interests align, that's when you can actually powerfully move and engage. So you just have to be honest and clear and transparent with yourself and with the parents you're working with. Like, here's when like our organization has an interest and we're going to move and go and implement a program because we got funding to do it. It's still going to do good work in the world, but maybe it came from somewhere other than, we know it's going to help and serve parents. But if it didn't if it didn't come from parents and it didn't involve parents from the beginning about what that was actually going to look like, it's a program that's going to help parents, but it's not a program that's going to necessarily empower parents. And we just have to be clear about that. And if our mission and our intent in this campaign, in this project, in this work, for us, like I have the gift that gets to be all my work in the organization, so I don't have to deal with all that other stuff. I get the reality though of what it means to work in nonprofits. So I think if it is that like our mission, our task for this project is to empower and powerfully engage parents, then you have to involve them in the decisions about what that's going to look like, how it's going to operate, who's going to shape it and inform it as it moves forward. That has to involve parents in a real authentic way from the beginning.
And as you shared earlier, this is really how your work unfolded with the work in LA and the demands that were coming from the parents, and then ultimately the legal action that you're about to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do even like, we literally have to build structures inside our organization for that to happen. So we have parent committees that meet regularly, and we're very clear in those committees, like this is what the parent committee is making decisions about and influencing and shaping. And then the parents are the ones that make those decisions. And then the staff has to implement, right? We staff the committee, we support it. And then our organizers, me as the VP, it's my task then to implement and make those things happen in the world.
Great. Thank you for that. And there was a question specifically for you, so I'll just pivot toward that question, Hannah. And that was asking you to say a little bit more about the logistics of doing virtual meetings with parents, especially when we know that not all parents have reliable internet, excuse me, or adequate digital devices. Any tips for organizers?
Yes, so we actually did spend, when we had to transition to our meetings being virtual, we stopped, the whole point of our meetings for a while were just to train parents on the technology. So, and that's giving them a tool, right? That's giving them a tool they can use now to connect with their student's teacher and all sorts of other things that they need. So you do have to take the time and invest in teaching and training parents. We use Zoom because Zoom can also work on phones. And so a lot of parents, you can still engage with a Zoom meeting just by calling in on a number. You don't need even the app. You don't need a phone that can download the app. So that's the platform we found works best. Interpretation is hard on Zoom, so we have to stumble. We're still stumbling through some of that, but that is the technology we use. And we found that all of our parents have been able to figure out how to use it and engage. Yeah, but we had to train them. We also, our organization, we raised money and provided Chromebooks for all of our core parents that are involved. So that, that did help a lot. I will say though, the gift of distance learning is many parents now, districts are providing Chromebooks and hotspots for their children to engage. So if you time your meetings in a way that the child isn't using it, parents now could probably use the technology and the equipment the school gave them to be involved.
Thank you, Hannah. A question for Liliana from Leo Callejas. Liliana, the question is, many low resource families may not be able to access the website. You talked about this amazing website that your school district created with a lot of links to other resources. What else could be done? How were you able to help those families who didn't have access to the website, and what else could be done? And anybody else who has a response can answer this one too.
Yes, when we brought it to our school district, that some families didn't have internet, and they were promoting Comcast and some other companies that were offering very low prices for families in our area. But that was, when you really were contacting the companies, they were like, you had to wait like for 60 days to go through the process and all that. So we brought it to them, their attention, that is still, is not being effective for families, that they don't have the internet at that time and they need it at that time, cannot wait. So the school district did some surveys again in the community and finding out which families didn't have access to internet, and they provided hotspots for those families. So the hotspot that they provided, it connects actually up to 5 devices. So, if they have 4 or 5 children, they can all be connected at the same time doing the remote learning, and, for the families to do that. Also, when they send me I could see that for the first time when they create this website, I try myself and see if it was easy for parents. So when they sent me, it was like, what do you think? Do you think it will be easy? So as a parent, I try out myself and I see was easy. Actually, it's so easy. You copy the link and I started sending it in a text to the families. So, you have the link, you open the link, and actually from your phone, you open the whole link to all the resources that you need. So, it's again, communication. And yeah, because they might not know that our families, not all families had access, we are like a low income area. So that was important for them to know.
If you don't mind, I would love to just throw something out there that Nashville has done.
Please.
We pressed our mayor and our council to give us access to the CARES Act dollars. So in Nashville, we have 90,000 students, and we geared up our teachers, our parents. We wanted everyone flooding the mayor's office with notices that we needed to be one-to-one technology to student, because we actually had the displeasure of being hit by a major tornado a week before we had to shut down for COVID. So we had I cry sometimes when I just think about, how much more disenfranchised some of our community members immediately became. So we were already looking to go virtual because some of our larger schools were damaged. And we realized that we weren't even close to being one-to-one. So I would ask parents to pressure their community to use those those CARES Act dollars or any other federal grants that they get that have to be used immediately for pandemic supports. Ask them to make sure that not only you're buying laptops for children for one-to-one access, but also hotspots. So we purchased hotspots for individual students. We could only buy one for family, but we at least wanted to use that to help alleviate. We know we haven't ended the disparity, but we wanted to alleviate that as much as possible. But I just can't stress enough that if families and parents and community members are aware of the different opportunities or even different kind of pitfalls, I think they can organize fairly quickly because everyone wants what's best for their children. We all do. It's just we tend to disagree on what that will look like. And then, of course, those who can't be engaged, their voices are completely lost. So CARES Act dollars, CARES Act dollars, CARES Act dollars, focus on all the different ways that we're divided digitally, not just with the laptop, but with Wi-Fi access, or at least community Wi-Fi access where parents could pull up to a school, have access for their children. It's not ideal, but it's at least one other option.
Great, thank you, Christian. As we wrap up our questions, I want to make sure you see the poll on your screen. If you could just take a moment as you're listening to the Q&A, let us know what you thought about today's webinar. It helps us be responsive and make sure that we pay attention to quality improvement all the time in the learning opportunities that we provide.
If I could just, I just want to thank Yoli and the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for pulling this wonderful discussion together. It's great to have a full panel and a full discussion, really, you know, from the voice of parents and community organizers and those policymakers and electeds that are allies in this work. So thank you for pulling this important discussion together.
No, it's a core part of the work at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, especially in this time of COVID where somebody said that this might be a little bit of a silver lining if there is any. And we are finding that if there's ever a moment in time for those of us that work with children and on behalf of children to see families and see parents as essential partners, this is it. And this is the moment that if we leverage this sense of, oh my God, parents do matter, that we might actually begin to change the systems and the cultures inside of school districts for how we engage parents all the time. Even when we're back in school, we need to continue seeing parents as that critical teacher at home, coach, tutor, advocate. And we know that that combination, that relationship between parents and teachers, that relationship between school and home is part of the secret sauce for success for kids. So we're excited to be engaging in this conversation, hearing the voices of so many of you representing so many other parents, and hopefully it won't be the last time. I have one, I think one last question, and we'll take it back to Jose. And I'm gonna try to connect the conversation that Christian just raised around the CARES dollars, the CARES Act, and wondering, Jose, if the work that you led statewide from parents, how that connected to the CARES dollars, because governors have a lot of discretion for a big pot of those dollars, and how, what other organizations are engaged in these parent demands statewide in California? So it's sort of a two-part question.
We tracked the CARES money and how much was coming into our district, as well as a couple of other pots of stimulus money that came from the federal government to county government. So it's like, don't, got to follow the money. And there's pots of money at the city level that isn't directly related to education, but that are interesting, partly around like Parks and Rec stuff, libraries, where there could be a nexus between learning loss initiatives and work, and working with school districts. And not a lot of cities and school districts get along, or you got like places where, like in San Jose, we've got like 17 school districts within the city boundaries. So even if you do play well, it's lots of fiefdoms. Yeah, no, it did. I think it played a role in how we advocated locally around these community actions, where we were asking for commitments around how some of this money was used. To be honest, it wasn't a whole lot of money when push came to shove in terms of just the size of districts, with the exception of Los Angeles and I would assume New York and maybe Chicago and Houston, like the big public systems in the country that then sort of saw bigger pots of money. I think San Jose, it was like 13 million. I mean, it's still substantive, but not out of the world. So no, but I think it is important, assuming whatever happens at elections, that there might be additional federal monies. I think that it is super important that people start organizing and advocating around your state legislatures and as well your congressional delegations. It's likely that at least one more sort of federal stimulus is coming if this administration, through this administration, and if there is a change of administration, there could be additional monies. And so I think we've just got to be talking, I think, a lot about learning loss. And I see it as sort of like a coming tidal wave. You know, it's like a tsunami of like 2-3 years from now, we're going to be talking about this generation of children.
Uh-oh. Jose, did we lose you? Hannah, do you want to fill in for him?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, I would guess he was probably wrapping up. I do think, just to reiterate, it is about like staying ahead, following the money, and like seeing where some of this might be coming, for sure.
Yeah. And really, just to begin closing this out, I think where Jose was trying to tie all of this together, which is what prompted this webinar and the several others that we have, is that learning loss is real. And it is impacting the most vulnerable children, the most vulnerable families and communities. And so this is our moment to continue to have parents with educators, with legislators and leaders, making sure that we mitigate, we slow, we stop, and then reverse this learning loss, because it will be catastrophic, and we already know where it will fall the hardest. And we're all doing that very important work. So with that, thank you all for completing the poll. Thank you all for joining us in this fantastic, very powerful conversation led by parent leaders. Adrian, thank you for moderating and for taking us through all the stories. Thank you to each of our speakers, to Liliana, to Kathy, to Hannah, to Jose, to Brittany, and to Christian, and I hope I didn't miss anybody. And as we close out, let me just remind you, Sierra at the top of the hour had this same slide up about our next 2 webinars. Next Tuesday, again, part of Learning Loss series, we'll pivot to how states are responding and what some of the key states that we'll lift up, what they're doing to close the distance learning digital divide. That's on September 1st. And then on September 8th, we'll come back with PBS, one of our key partners. They'll share with us how they're unlocking digital learning and science with one of their new series called Eleanor Wonders Why. So please join us again every Tuesday from 3 to 4:30. Thank you for joining us today, and stay healthy and safe. Bye all.